AI is going everywhere, and it's getting plugged in. And whether you're AI to the core or not, the tools you're going to be using to do your marketing, to do your whatever, are all having AI built into it. And here's the thing: is on the one hand, there's this excitement about AI and where it's going, and then there's this big detractor, a lot of fear around it, especially when you talk about a general intelligence coming in the next few years. And what a lot of people don't realize is we've been using AI for years and years and years anyhow, and it's built into all kinds of things. The difference is it's now talking to us.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Todd Friesen with us. I have known Todd for decades. He is an industry pioneer, an SEO pioneer with over 25 years of experience. Spans the digital spectrum from SEO, CRO to demand gen, analytics, and growth hacking. He's a veteran leader and a team builder who's had key roles at Salesforce, at Vimeo, and other places. And a seasoned conference speaker as well, which is how I got to know him. Todd, it's so great to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure to be here, Stephan, and to just see your face again. It's been we were just talking in the preamble up, just when we were connecting, how many times we shared the stage at those many conferences and sitting in hotel lobbies over a beer and things like that. So it's just my pleasure to be here and to finally have got this on the calendar. I will raise my hand and take responsibility for the many times that you have requested to have this time to hang out, and I was just not able to. So I'm glad I am today.
Me too. Well, it's great to have you. So if we could start by sharing a little bit about how you got into this world, because as an SEO pioneer, it was the Wild West back in the day, and there was so much opportunity to make bank doing some sketchy tactics, black hat stuff, and you were quite notable or infamous in the industry as somebody who has figured out how to print money. Back in those days.
Yeah, back in the early days, and it's part of that, like that sort of smoke and mirrors thing of marketing to a large extent. Yeah, I cut my teeth in the quote unquote black hat and sort of the spamming of the early Google, but it wasn't as there were certainly a lot of people doing much more sneaky, nefarious things than I was. I was just the one that was. I like the stage. I like conferences, and I was sort of the first one to raise my hand and go, "Hey, I do this black." I was one of the first ones to just sort of want to talk about it publicly, and I think I got a lot of notoriety out of it just for being the first guy to go at a conference and go, "Hey, this is what I do, and this is why you get in trouble as merchants," when I was doing the affiliate stuff and so on and so forth. And it was a lot of fun. But to back up to sort of the first thing you asked, like, how did I get into this? It was the late '90s, and I always loved computers, and people were learning how to sort of build websites. Microsoft Front Page was right around the corner way back then, and a friend of mine had been helping me learn how to do some HTML and build some simple web pages and things like that. I was an accountant for an oil company at the time, and while we were sort of going through this, and I was learning a little bit of HTML, my friend sent me a program that I don't even know how he got it. He goes, "Hey, you might find this interesting," and sent me this to this website, and it was the very first version of Web Position Gold, if you recall, all the way back. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, Web Position Gold was a software that you fed all your information into, your keywords and your copy and everything, and it would make pages specifically for all the search engines at the time, which this is pre-Google, and there was no crawlers. You had to submit, and so it would make all these pages for like Hotbot web crawler, Lycos, InfoSeek, AltaVista, like all of these things. And then you would go submit, you'd publish the pages, and then you would submit the URLs to all the search engines, and then they would come and ingest it and rank them. And that was how it all got started. I looked at this and I went, "Oh, you can manipulate pages to rank better. It hadn't even crossed my mind that you could influence search engines, but when it did, it was just, that meme, that explosion, and then I was and that was it. I was all in on SEO at that point, and then slowly worked my way through. Started building websites, started SEOing websites, did all my affiliate stuff. Moved into the agency space, then went in house, and fast forward to here. But yeah, one little piece of software, and Dump Truck was the one you'd load the URLs in, and it would go do the auto submission. That was the very beginning of it.
And what is the most lucrative, prestigious keyword that you managed to rank for back in those early days?
Phenermine, the
Wow.
prescription diet pill craze. That was the first big money part of the affiliate space, until it ran rampant. Right? It was diet pills and hair loss and Viagra and some birth control pills. That's where it all started, and then it got so big that the online prescription companies started offering more things, and all of a sudden one day, narcotics started showing up at online prescriptions, and that was we all were like, this it's over, and the government came in at that point and said you can't be doing that, and the OPs got shut down, and everybody was in a flurry to sell off their websites and domain names to anybody who was still willing to take their risk on that, and eventually it all went away, and we started doing other things. Casinos were the next big thing. I never got into the I consider that sort of more the darker side, sort of preying on the vices of humanity. I never went down that road particularly.
Yeah, I remember. So Hamlet Batista is a friend of mine, and he managed to rank on page one in Google for Viagra for quite a while, and that made him millions.
Just money. It was, and every month, that was back when Google did the monthly updates, right? And you would, in the Google dance, as it came to be called, and you would sit there, you'd be watching your rankings, checking them every day, and then there'd be a fluctuation. And then the next day it'd be a little, and it'd take about 3 to 5 days of fluctuation, and then it would lock in, and wherever you were, that was where you were for the next month. And so you could just see SEOs around the world just sitting there watching and waiting and seeing what locked in, and then replicating it like mad for the next month and hoping that the next month you'd lock in some more. And yeah, it was crazy times, man. You think back to like these static indexes or indices that you would have a month at a time. It
Yeah.
was like, dude, man, that was a long time ago.
And how did you end up with the handle Oil Man?
Everybody wants that to be a better story. I much prefer letting people guess, because they'd be like, "Oh, oil, slippery, slick," getting away with things. I'm like, I was in the accounting and finance department at Chevron Canada when I joined all the online forums, which was even pre Webmaster World, where like Virtual Promote and the Gym World forums, and nobody used their real names. You had to have a handle, and I was working at an oil company, and so Oil Man seemed appropriate, and then it just stuck
Oh, that's
stuck
funny.
with me for all those years. There's still probably 5 or 6 people that if I was to bump into them today, they would still call me Oil Man, and never by my real name.
And back in those early days, you didn't want to get doxxed. You wanted to go by your handle because if folks knew who you were, especially at Google, they could target you and take your site rankings away.
Absolutely. I mean, those were the days where we were registering domains. You'd pick up the phone book and just open to a page and register a domain in a different city and a different name. And we had multiple hosting accounts all over the place. You didn't want shared IPs. You wanted to leave as little footprint and connectivity as possible because of exactly that. And with it being the wild wild west, there was no rules at that time about audit. Like ICANN wasn't auditing domain registrations for accurate information and things like that. And we've come a long way from that. But you would watch Matt Cutts at a conference. I mean, the stories are rampant of people that saw him click a button and nuke an entire network using the Google tools that connected all of all of that kind of stuff. You'd even want to obfuscate your affiliate IDs to not be the same across all those sites because they would pull that information
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, I knew people who would go up to Matt Cutts to ask him a question at a conference, but they'd make sure to turn their badge around so he wouldn't know their name when he when the guy goes up to talk to Matt. Yep.
Yeah, I remember one time we were doing a site clinic at a conference, and my old buddy Greg Bozer, Web Gorilla, his handle. We were on the panel with I think Matt Cutts was up there. I think Tim Meyer might have still been at Yahoo at that time, and the mic went to one guy and he raised his hand and started asking his question, and he was explaining what he was doing, and Greg and I both started into our mic like, stop, do not finish your question, don't say it. And he said it, and that was the end of his network, because we knew what he was doing was a violation. He wasn't intentionally doing it. He had some bad information, but Google was still acting on that, intentional or not. They wanted their index to be, pure and clean. So, but we couldn't, we were yelling, dude, stop talking, stop talking.
Zip it. Funny. Speaking of Greg Bozer, what's he up to these days, and do you keep in touch with him?
We haven't, like, our paths cross on the socials every now and again. We'll comment on something. I know Shelley Walsh has been doing a Pioneers of SEO podcast, and I know that he did an episode on that. But I haven't actually chatted with the guy in quite some time, which is it was a good reminder. A good prompt. I should reach out and see what he's up to. But it's one of those things, life gets going. Like the conference world was one thing, but we, like, a lot of us sort of grew up in it and sort of retired out of the circuit side of
Mm.
it, right? So that was the only time a lot of us ever saw each other. We lived in different countries, different states, what have you. So once you stop doing that, the distance grows pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah. But you kind of were like a dynamic duo for a time there, where you would speak on panels together. You'd speak doing workshops. Do you remember the SEO workshop you did at the Web 2.0 Expo? And I just walked in.
It looked very much like your SEO workshop, didn't it?
Oh my goodness! Oh, you got to tell the story. Like, that's like classic.
So yeah, oh my goodness, this is almost shameful. I'm so glad that we, apologized and made things right with you, so that I can even tell the story at this point. But we had, Greg and I, 100%, we were almost interchangeable. People would joke about that. We were always hanging out. We became really fast friends in the space. We had our SEO Rockstars podcast that we did for a long time, or, well, radio show. But we got invited to speak at the Web 2.0 Expo, which was sort of the new hotness in conferences at the time, right? When, hey, Web 2.0 is a thing, and now we're into Web 3.0 and whatnot. But they asked us to come and do this thing, and we were like, we gave it the sort of the same cursory attention we gave like a site clinic or things like that. We're at a search engine conference where we were so comfortable. And then sort of come to find out, as we got closer to the Web 2.0, it was just a lot. It was a lot bigger, and we were main staged into a room that held like a couple thousand people, and so all of a sudden we were like, whoa! And we had left it way to the end, as we do, and so we were kind of like, what are we gonna do? Like, this is a serious thing. We can't just get up there and get by on our good looks and a bunch of jokes. And so we started, going online and searching like file type PDF, file type PPT, and looking for like Web 2, all this kind of stuff. And we came across this really great presentation that covered a lot of the points that we had been sort of throwing around. And so we kind of reworked it a little bit and put it into a deck. And we were like, okay, perfect. This is like 2 a.m. the night before, of course. And then we got up and we were kind of laughing because to get to the punchline a little early, it was a Stephan Spencer presentation that had been published online, which was excellent. We thought we can totally use this and get away with it. That was the whole thing. We were gonna be getting away with it because Stephan goes to the search conferences. That's no big, and then we're on stage getting ready to go. They're testing the mics and everything, and I look up and what, like, fourth row, dead center, there you are in the room for our presentation. And I leaned over to Greg and I'm like, dude, Greg, look who's down there. And we just started laughing. And I think we owned up to it right at the beginning of the presentation, even with you sitting there in the room. That was,
Well, so what I recall was I raised my hand to ask a question because I saw one of like it didn't dawn on me that you used my presentation until a couple of slides in where it was mentioning some tools. There was like a bunch of tools listed, and one of them was an obscure tool that was mine. You know, Net Concepts Link Checker or something like that. And I raised my hand to say, "Hey, thanks for the shout out." And before like I could even finish my sentence, you told the whole audience, like, okay, we got an embarrassing admission here. This is actually Stephan's deck.
and we weren't invited back to Web 2.0 after that. Shocking.
Oh, you know who was giving the workshop? Yeah, yeah, that was me.
It's like, Stephan, come do your presentation properly. That would be great.
Oh my goodness, that was hilarious. That was absolutely hilarious, and it was so perfectly orchestrated from above. Like I never go in to hear other people's workshops on SEO. I could teach the thing. But for whatever reason, I saw you and Greg were giving this workshop and I'm like, okay, I'm really interested to hear what sort of black hat stuff they're going to work into this presentation to people who are in the Web 2.0 world. And I was sitting in the audience just expecting your usual brilliance of crazy, like sketchy stuff. And
Well,
it's like,
but
yeah,
we had talked about that too. It's like I said, the Web 2.0, it was the new hotness. It was going to be like the thing. So this was like a legit, like, we didn't feel that anybody wanted us to come in and talk about like the sketchy, black hat kind of stuff. We wanted to give more of a, like a, you know professional SEO thing, like for these people to go do with all their Web 2.0 properties and not get in trouble. So we didn't want to go down. We made that decision very clearly, but then we were like, well, neither of us own any collateral or any decks, on that side of it.
well, nowadays you can just ask Chat GPT for a whole outline.
Man, I had to do it. I had to do a job description. I was hiring a front end developer at Vimeo, and my boss was like, "Hey, right up, but we'll get to that maybe later." But I needed a whole team. I was in charge of the. They gave me the website, and it was just me and one other SEO guy, and they're like, rebuild the website. I'm like, I'm going to need some resources for that. So anyways, go hire some engineers. And I'm like, I've never written an engineering job description before, so I chat GPT'd that thing, and it was awesome. It was
Yep.
it was like a two prompt request, and it was a perfect front end engineering with bullets and everything. It was kind of scary, really.
It's amazing. People who are afraid of this brave new world, I think, are not opening their minds and their hearts up to the fact that this is all unfolding with exquisite orchestration from above, right? If we can't take our next breath without the creator willing it, then certainly we're not headed to a Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome future. You just have to believe in the benevolence and um, just the forgiveness and unconditional love that is showered on us every moment, and you'll know that this is not going to end up being one of those dystopian sci-fi horror movies.
Yeah, it's dystopian in a way, I think, but not in a, Mad Max, like Thunderdome, we're all going to be fighting over water kind of thing. But it is interesting, when you get into the AI stuff, and the I can never remember his name, but the CEO of NVIDIA, just this week was like, hey, we're going to general intelligence, general artificial intelligence is
Yeah.
5 years away. And which I think is what that Q star thing is that Altman and his crew were sort of secretly working on. But
Mhm.
anyhow, it's interesting that like the as we were talking beforehand, I've been sort of enjoying some time off since the beginning of August, and I've actually been enjoying that time mostly off. So a lot of the AI stuff, a lot of what's really gone on with Chat GPT has been in those last 5 months, more so than the few months ahead of it, because it's been about a year since GPT even announced, and so it was the first few months, and then so I haven't actually followed it that closely. I know SEOs are using it. I know people are pumping out content like crazy, but I have not dabbled in it a whole lot, so I'm not super versed in it at the moment, and I'm kind of okay with that. It seems very very rabbit traily to me to spend too much time there.
Well, if I learned this from Daryl Anka, who this might sound hokey for some, but he channels Bashar. So this being that just kind of speaks through him. So it's like a trance channel. And what he explains is that the fear of missing out actually creates the missing out. Otherwise, you are not missing out on anything. If you are meant to hear something, learn something, read something, it will happen. It's preordained, predestined that you will receive that. But what is getting us in trouble is the fear, because fear is inverse faith. I learned that concept from the book The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, written 100 years ago. So if fear is inverse faith, and FOMO, fear of missing out, is that you're afraid you're going to miss out on something if you don't attend this event, if you don't play with this AI tool, or if you're not keeping up with every single advance happening on a week by week basis with AI or whatever, you're going to miss out. Well, guess what? Then you are asking the universe to create some missing out for you, because that's what you're focused on. You're focused on the fear of missing out. Okay, some missing out on your menu. Okay, coming right up. And then you're programming that into your illusion, your simulation that you're experiencing, called reality.
Sure. I mean, I follow the logic of you're only missing out if you decide you're missing out, right? Like if you weren't there, you weren't there. Did you miss out? That's really, there's I'll follow the logic on that. I don't know that I go further with it is as you believe, and that's okay. But the logic of missing out and how that all works, and did you really miss out? It's only missing out if you think you missed out. That all makes sense to me, 100%.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to live in a place of scarcity, lack, fear, and chasing after the next algorithm update or AI tool or whatever, by all means, and I'm being just hypothetical here. I'm not speaking to anybody in particular, but if that's your experience, then you're ordering that up to be your experience. And I wouldn't want that. I would want just the ease and grace and joy of trusting that everything is being handed to me and orchestrated in the heavens for me, and nothing else that I'm meant to experience is going to be missed. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it's just distraction too. And you see
Yeah.
companies, tons of companies right now just getting distracted with it. Like, what are we doing with AI? Like, don't do anything with AI. Your business is working. Like, keep doing the fundamentals, and they steer away from it. You start to lose the fundamentals. You get your eye off the ball of the things that are working for you, and then you got to come back from that. So it's all very cool. It's all very fun. Everybody that's doing it for like that's spun over to AI to create content is getting called out on it, because it's the like if you're going to go and say, hey, we're going to do most of our content now with AI, then you got to go hire a bunch of fact checkers, because it's getting wrong. Like it is
Yeah.
like you want to talk about misinformation getting spread. This is not helping, not even a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. It is just full of misinformation, what AI folks call hallucinations. And yeah, I mean, it's an obfuscation, really. It's an obfuscation because it's basically downright lying. The algorithm is looking for the next word to use. It's just basically an LLM is just a fancy autocomplete, and it's just coming up with the next word, next word, next word. It's like, oh, we don't have a source, we don't have a factoid. Let's make one up because we need a word here. And boom, there you go. There's the percentage, or there's the reference to some magazine article that never existed. And wow, if we get to the place where I think we're going to get, we're going to be we're going to be awash in so much AI generated misinformation. It will make the real information that was written by humans a tiny percentage by comparison, and that's not good. That's not helpful to humanity. On the other side, I don't want to dissuade people from playing with AI and becoming well versed in it, because it is the future, and to have that as one of your skill sets is going to make you future proof in many ways. So I encourage you. And the quote I love to cite on AI, it's from Peter Diamandis, and he says that there's going to be two kinds of businesses by the end of this decade. Businesses that are using AI at their core, doesn't matter, service industry or whatever, it doesn't matter. AI at their core, or out of business. I don't know. I just don't want people to think that I'm anti AI, because I'm not. I'm optimistic and excited about this new chapter in humanity, but also there's a new chapter unfolding too for humanity that's not just about AI. It's about like a great awakening of humanity to their connection to that unseen world, to their creator, to all that is. And that's very exciting. That's much more exciting than AI, because that changes everything. That changes the whole nature of reality at the very fundamental level.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know about a lot of the rest of it, but AI is going everywhere for sure, and it's getting plugged in. And whether you're AI to the core or not, the tools you're going to be using to do your marketing, to do your whatever, are all having AI built into it. And here's the thing: is I was talking to somebody about this just the other day. There's sort of there's on the one hand there's this excitement about AI and where it's going, and then there's this big detractor, a lot of fear around it, especially when you talk about a general intelligence coming in the next few years. And what a lot of people don't realize is we've been using AI for years and years and years anyhow, and it's built into all kinds of things. The difference is it's now talking to us, right? Generative AI, and it has exploded very quickly. And the part of it is they gave it personality to a certain extent, right? If you're polite to Chat GPT, it's polite back to you. If you just are businessy about it, it's more, just the facts. But that's what's got people really freaked out. But I mean, I spent years at Salesforce, and many years ago, they, you look back to when they announced Einstein, which is the artificial intelligence within Salesforce for sales forecasting and for help desk support and for all of these things. It's already been there for a long time, and nobody was scared of that. It was all very helpful. But as soon as you give it a personality, you give it conversation, you give it that, then you start to as I mentioned earlier, anthropomorphize it to a certain extent. People start freaking out, and that part is certainly more scary because it's providing articles and information and facts versus just something in the background that's doing complicated math for you.
Yeah, it's giving out medical advice. It's giving out financial advice. And it has exactly zero experience. It has zero real world experience. How many surgeries has it
It has
performed?
the experience of all the information on the internet, Stephan.
Yeah, but the experience is not its own. So it's hodgepodging it together without having had performed one surgery or created one business or built one factory or one home or purchased and flipped and made a profit off of one real estate deal. It has exactly zero experience with all that. That's, I think, why Google incorporated the extra E in their EAT. So it's now EEAT, this acronym for like a quality standard. You have experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And that's what you need to convey in your web content. Otherwise, you're going to get dinged for it.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and it's easy enough to figure out. Like Google's pretty smart at this point. Let's be honest. And all AI is at its deepest core is a whole bunch of if-then statements. It's just an incredible amount of if-then statements that go bigger and bigger and bigger. And all Chat GPT is the most likely next word at the end of the
Yeah.
day, based on an unbelievable amount of data, but it's still just the most likely if-then scenario. So it's going to get it wrong. It's 100% going to get it wrong. We get it wrong. I mean, let's be honest. I get stuff wrong all the time. Ask my wife.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's certainly an interesting time to be alive. I think it's an exciting time to be alive, but yeah, I encourage folks to play with AI and not be afraid of it, but to instead embrace it as another tool in your tool chest. If you can take a screenshot of a web page that you're working on and ask ChatGPT to look at it and give you advice to improve its SEO and conversion and um, authority and persuasiveness and all that. It will do that. It will do a pretty good job of it, surprisingly. You could even ask it now to design you a new logo. Here's a screenshot of my website, of my homepage. Give me a logo or give me a podcast cover. I just did this yesterday because my wife Ryan is working on a new website. We have a mock-up. It's beautiful of the new homepage, but we're still trying to dial in the logo and the podcast cover and ask ChatGPT, Dolly, to create.
um, but no, I totally agree with you on that. Yeah. Well, we were talking about AI and you can feed in all kind. You can feed in like logo design, page conversion, that kind. And I think going down that road with it, I think is really cool
Is
because everywhere I've been, and most recently at Vimeo, even when we were working on what we're doing from an A/B or multivariate testing uh, program, it's like you need to know, you need to test something, right? So my when I was at Vimeo, my role was to stand up all the technology, get everybody trained, and go, here's the new testing program. It was very cool. It had some AI built in on the back end for optimization and stuff like that, but it's still only as good as what you put in the front end to
mm-hmm.
test, right? And everybody's and so you kind of sit back and then everybody starts having ideas. Oh, red button, blue button, like, and then you start to get more complicated from there on down. But it's still only as good as what you put in there, and we get sort of sometimes tunnel visioned into that, where you can go have stuff generated, but then you got to come back and test it. I think, which is the key point to saying like, hey, Chat GPT, tell me how to improve the CRO. Great, prove it out because you still don't know. That could be one of those hallucinations, and it could be totally based on other things that aren't as relevant to your business as whatever the experience that GPT had when it made that recommendation
Yeah.
for you.
Well, one of the kind of foundational principles of CRO is to fix what's broken. If it's obviously broken, just fix it. You don't need to split test it or multivariate test it. And And then after that, the stuff that you're unsure about, whether it's an AI that's giving you the advice or a high priced consultant who's bringing you the advice, if you're not sure about it, you can test it. That's the beauty of tools like VWO and Optimizely and so forth is, I have a theory, I have an idea, I have a hallucination. Let me test it. Let me see if it proves it out or if in actuality it doesn't work.
Right. Well, and I think the key thing, to dial in on what you said, they're moving past the AI stuff for a second, is like some of this stuff you just need to fix. Not everything needs to be tested into. Some ideas we know are the right thing to do. And that's, again, that's another battle you get in businesses and in larger corporations where, there's a whole bunch of people in the room and somebody goes, "Hey, I've been doing this 25 years. This is wrong. This is right." Like there's certain things you just know. And they're like, "Well, we'll test into it." And I'm like, "No, just do it." And then finally somebody goes, "Oh, well, we'll test it. We'll run it for a week." And you test it. And you're like, "Oh, lo and behold, if some of the things that aren't, I mean, there are some fundamental truths in marketing and website development that just are what they are. And you shouldn't go around doing things differently just because you think it's going to work better. Like 9 out of 10 times, you're not the guy that's coming up with the next new conversion idea. Unless you're an Eisenberg, those guys come up with cool
Oh
stuff
yeah,
all the
they're
time.
they're, they're awesome. So Brian Eisenberg was a guest on this podcast. Yeah,
Awesome. I miss that guy. I haven't seen him in years
yeah.
either.
I haven't seen him in person for quite a while either, but yeah, that's a great episode. Now, if you could kind of give us the real world problem or scenario with SEO and how it fits into a corporate structure, because you've worked at some very big companies trying to push through SEO initiatives and get buy-in and get attention and focus and budget and all that. But yet this stuff tends to get pigeonholed or it gets sidelined or misattributed. Let's talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, great topic, and it's one that I've commented on a few times over the summer here on LinkedIn, and wrote up a couple of different things, and sort of the burr under my saddle, so to speak, on this one really is the pigeonholing, as which is the great word that you used on SEO, and SEO by and large being, or the SEO guy being the SEO guy, or the SEO woman, the SEO person within the company, they're just the SEO guy. Like they do titles and they review your copy, and that's what we do with SEO. Even after, 25 years, 25, 30 years of SEO being a thing, we're still kind of at this point where SEO is a checkbox and very segregated off and not given credit for people that know SEO well and have been doing SEO for a long time, to not know things like conversion optimization. We were just talking about development, coding, page search, design. Like we've done it all, and there really are. There's, to not oversteer too far, but there are two schools. There are two really kinds of SEOs. There are SEOs that really are content only or content specific SEOs, and then there's SEOs that have been sort of around, I think, typically longer. I'm probably going to get lit up. You might get some hate mail over this, but I think sort of a lot of the newer generation of SEO are more content focused because the technology has improved so much that you don't have to do as much work on the back end. But what I've been trying to do over the last several years of my career are move, like, own SEO, but own other things, and to take those skill sets and actually use them and get recognition for them, because hey, we know how to talk to engineers, we know how to do all these other things. I can own and the operations side and the marketing stack for a website. I can own all of that, which includes SEO plus the engineering plus the content, so on and so forth, and effectively run the entire operation. So I've been trying to move SEO into the light of a more multidiscipline thing, and for my career to do more than just be the SEO guy, because you don't see a lot of VP of SEO, right? You see VP of marketing that owns SEO, VP of digital that owns SEO. You don't see a lot of SEOs making that last sort of jump into sort of executive or senior executive roles. And I'm trying to figure out how to, sort of evangelize that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
better.
Yeah, because it really is strategic. And yet, if you look at how it's allocated, budgeted, resources and all that, it tends to get short shrift in large part because it is not attributable in the same way that paid search is or paid social. So you can't predict as well whether the ROI is going to come and when and to what degree. You just have to make a leap of faith, and thus that leap is oftentimes not made. So spend a bunch of money on paid search, get 3x ROI. Well, that's great, or 2.5x, but you could have gotten 10x if you'd put that same money into SEO.
True, but you can sit on that 3x or that 5x or whatever it is you get to optimize. So you can sit on that all day, and you can forecast it, and you can present it to the board of directors, and you can present it to Wall Street, and all of these things, and you go, this, we know this, right? And it's an easy sell at that point. But you're exactly right. The number one reason SEO doesn't work is because it doesn't get done. And it doesn't get done because you don't get the resources. And I'm not talking about writing title tags and getting the H1s right and the body copy right. I'm talking about hreflangs are broken, sitemaps are broken, things where you need development resources. And especially if you're in a product driven company, the vast majority of engineering resources are focused on product and product led growth, right? And and then you're come back to the, well, who's running the website? Well, we got, part of two engineers, every Thursday and Friday on the third week of the month, they can work on the website. Well, we're not going to get any of that other stuff done in that case.
Yeah. Speaking of product led growth, the author of Product Led SEO, Eli Schwartz, he's a good friend of mine. He was a guest on this podcast too. He's an awesome guy. Do you know Eli?
I was on a podcast with him. 97th Floor put together a little podcast with me and him and somebody from Eventbrite. We talked some shop. But it was great to see. I haven't seen Eli in a long time either. It was great to be on a show with him as well. He's a sharp dude. As a sharp guy.
Yeah. So, what would you say are some of the most surprising lessons that you learned from your days at Salesforce, at Vimeo, these other big corporate environments that you had been at over the years?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I was ever really like sort of blown away by stuff. I think like Salesforce was my first foray into like big company, and when I joined, it was like 13,000 people. When I left, it was bumping up on 80,000. So it was the getting things done. I think, as we sort of alluded to already, was sort of the biggest thing. I thought that walking into some of these things that hey, it's a big company, they got lots of resources, and they do, but websites and web marketing are by and large really left sort of to the bottom of the list for a lot of big corporations. Where that's a little bit different is when you talk about the publishing powerhouses out there, right? Dotdash Meredith with all of their network of sites that are, I mean, they're purely content plays. So they have to have all the technical stuff done, but they making money on page views and ads. CBS, all their queue of stuff. That's a little bit different. But even over there, I've known several people that work in those different companies, and they're like, they still struggle to get the resources in order to do a lot of that right. And I think that was probably the biggest surprise to me, was that I just assumed that would happen. And I think you just always assume that everything is more buttoned up than it ever is. I think that was sort of the other big assumption is you roll into this company and you're like, from the outside looking in, it's all fantastic, and then you get inside and you realize it's still just chock full of a bunch of humans doing doing their best to do the jobs that they are getting paid for, and there's miscommunications, and there's power struggles, and there's lack of resources, and there's prioritization battles, and there's like internal education processes that are broken, and you got to just get in there and roll with how whatever company it is that you're at, this is how it works here, and you got to learn how to navigate that, for a career and politically for getting things done. I think that was sort of my biggest surprise, was that it wasn't, you pull back the hood and it's a mess everywhere. There's nobody that actually has it together at all. That surprised me. Now
Yeah.
I'm just cynical about it, I suppose.
Well, everything's perfectly imperfect. Ram Dass said this quote I just love, that we're all just walking each other home. I feel that's very true. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's been a wild ride. It's been a great adventure, quite frankly, and so many great people along the way. So many friendships that, like, even, like catching up with you, and like Greg Bozer, longtime good friend. Haven't talked to him in forever. If we picked up the phone, it would be, it'd be like yesterday. So there's just, and some great memories of all of that. But we all grew up in it, right? I think there's that core of us that were around since the very, very early days, that are still, somewhat connected. And I think, do you remember when we had it, like, we sort of counted the generations of SEOs, and like we're all first gen, and then there was like a second gen, and then a third gen, and then it just became a big where you could sort of have these markers of like influxes into the conferences you could sort of scale things by. And I think if you go back to that first and second gen world, there's a bond there to having been part of starting something that has become what it is. It's very cool.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely one of the OGs. So carrying on with this concept here, I know we're running out of time, but the lessons learned from big corporate world. Well, what about the personal and professional challenges that have hit you the hardest through your career, your storied career in SEO, that have actually been gifts? And if you want to talk even about what the disease that you had been challenged with, and how that fit into your evolution as an SEO and as a human, that'd be, I think, really interesting for our listener to hear.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of stuff over the years, and I think there's a certain amount of, like, life has challenges, life has twists and turns, and you're going to get hit with them in various places. And there's basically, like, there's kind of two things. The most recent is, with all the tech layoffs going on, it's sort of the cool thing to do if you're remotely related to tech, is to lay off 10+% of your workforce these days. Unfortunately, I got caught up in the layoff from Vimeo earlier this year, and and I'd been there for a while, and I understood what had, how things were changing, how things were morphing, and it makes sense. Like, I'm not carrying a chip on my shoulder over that or anything. It's been an opportunity to have some time off, which I haven't had since I was like 15 years old, which was a very, very long time ago, as you can see in the beard here. And so it was a real blessing in that regard, to spend some extra time at home, and some extra time with my wife, and I know we were talking a little bit earlier, spending some extra time, with my Bible, and sort of getting, my Christianity sort of back in focus, that's been a blessing. And now it's time to go back to work, and see what's next, and going through some different interviews. But that's been hard too. There's been a humbling that has come from that. And my wife will attest to this. When I got laid off, I was like, oh, I'm going to take August off, and then I'll just sort of let LinkedIn, let all my search people know that, let the network know that I'm back on the market, and I'll have a job like that. Because you know who I am? I'm the oil man. I had this very cocky, like, it'll be no problem. And it's been hard. There's and it's and in a realization that, one, I'm not all that, which is a humbling thing to go through, and to really realize there's a lot of good people out there right now. There's a lot of good people looking for work. Very, very talented, very smart people. And I can't be angry or jealous for losing out on a role to any of those people. I had the same opportunity to interview for a lot of those roles, and it hasn't worked out. So that wasn't the role
Mhm.
for me, and that's okay. So in a continuing, lesson in humility, which is not a bad thing to go through in life. I truly believe that we need to, you know, be well aware of who we
Mhm.
are and not caught up in that. So that was really hard at first, and I've been coming around to see the gift of that more so than first being all offended, about it. So hopefully back to work soon. I'm ready to get back to doing something. But you mentioned a disease that I had. And I still have it. It's called trigeminal neuralgia. It's a malformed nerve thing. If anybody watching or listening wants to Google it, have a blast. It's called the suicide disease. Never ever felt that way in my life, so don't have to worry about that. But I had to go through, and you were visibly, a witness to some of my lowest points in time when we were sitting. You and Chris Hart and I were sitting in a hotel lobby bar in Chicago, actually, after a conference, and we were just trying to have some appetizers and a beer, and I could hardly eat. I could hardly talk. It's a facial pain thing, and I've since gone through a whole bunch of medication. I was one of the blessings of that was working at a company like Salesforce that cares so much about its people that they're like, everybody was it was cool that they knew what this was. And if I had to step away for an afternoon because I was just in too much pain, or everybody was just like, we got you, and there was a real graciousness around that, which was great. And there was also short-term disability protections and all that kind of stuff, but everybody was really super supportive about it. But it was still one of those things that was always always a struggle to deal with. And it's just been part of like you say, part of the growth, part of the life path. I don't know that I can necessarily say, hey, this condition contributed to my career, and this it was just there alongside. um, I think maybe holding in check a little bit when I talk about having to go through, a lesson in humility this summer. I think maybe that was keeping me from having to go through a bigger lesson. I'm not entirely sure on that, but it was an affliction that I've had to deal with, and I had some surgery for it, back at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's a lengthy story. But the short version is, it was in the, it was 6 months into the pandemic, and so all the hospital rules were really bonkers and bizarre. And I'd been just newly married for like 4 months and going in to get this surgery, and it took way longer than it should have. I wasn't coming out of the anesthetic, and they were going to just send my wife home because I wasn't even into recovery. They were like, and they were afraid I was going to have a heart attack. They were afraid I was going to stroke out. They couldn't get my pain under control coming up. I had IVs up and down both arms afterwards from all the heart medication, everything they were pumping into me. But my wife, um, she was a nurse. She knows the rules. She like was on the phone with the recovery room nurse, and they're like, "You just need to go home, and we'll call you when he's awake." And she was like, "Yeah, absolutely not. I know, like, you will come get me, or I will just kick the store down and come back there myself." And so they came and got her, brought her back, and um, I was just pale, and my heart rate and blood pressure were through the roof. And she just put her hands on me and prayed to God to stop
Mhm.
it. And I had been unaware of it. I was like so out. I was still, but I woke up and I heard that. The only thing I remember of the whole thing is I remember her praying. She said amen. And then she was getting ready to leave. And I said amen. And all these heads snapped around because I was all of like, where'd that come from? And then I was out again. And
Wow.
that was
That
a
gives me
pretty amazing
goosebumps.
moment. But I woke up the next morning and I didn't remember any of it when I first woke up, right? Because it was all during during the haze. And so when I woke up, I felt great. I'd been through a whole night of sleeping and everything. And so, um, I posted on Facebook, surgery, all this kind of, my wife was so mad because I didn't know any of the night before. It hadn't been brought back to my memory yet. And so she came in and she was saying, she was like, don't you remember? I'm like, I don't remember any of that. But then when she was telling the story, I remembered that moment of prayer in the middle. And that was cool. And again, I don't know that it ties to, the career or anything, but it ties to, an answered prayer and an incredible moment in life. It says I could have something very bad could have happened on that table. I could have stroked out. I could have been a vegetable. I could have died on that table, but I'm still here and I feel great. And so, God's not done using me in this life yet.
Amazing. Amazing. I remember we had a conversation, I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 years ago or something. I think it was maybe even at the Javits Center, or maybe it was at in San Francisco at one of the conferences. Anyways, it was just you and I sitting, having a bite to eat or something, and you were talking to me about the the disease and how you were just working through it, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but I do remember the feeling of it, that you were in a place of like in a state of grace or something like that. You were just in a place of acceptance and kind of knowingness, and I thought that was really really cool to see.
Well, it's one thing that comes to mind a lot, and to stay on the spiritual side of it for a moment. In all the Apostle Paul in the New Testament, he's ministering constantly. He's constantly on the road being a missionary, and he writes all the letters, right, to the Ephesians, to the Philippians, to the Colossians, all of those, and he talks in one of the letters about the thorn in his side, but he has prayed to God to remove the thorn in his side, the thorn in his flesh, um, and it was never taken away, and it was part of his suffering here on earth, and that is a thing that I've hung on to, is we don't get the answer we want to everything just because we pray it, and that is, and he begged God to take that, whatever it was. It's not ever said what that affliction was, but God never did. But God still powerfully used the Apostle Paul up to his dying day. So it's to not. I decided, within that view, I can't I can't expect this to be gone, but I can certainly live with it, and I can still be productive and useful, learning how to balance
Mhm.
these things.
It's a great way to look at life and at your mission, your soul's purpose, and where you fit into this big picture. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your brilliance and your wisdom and your storied history and yeah, challenges and everything with us. Thank you for your vulnerability and openness. If our listener or viewer is interested in learning more from you, if they're maybe even interested in bringing you on to their team and hiring you as their VP of SEO, where do they get in touch?
Mostly these days, you can just come find me on LinkedIn. If you just throw my name in there, Todd Friesen, or I think it's LinkedIn/Todd R Friesen. I can never remember, honestly, but I'm pretty much,
We'll put it in the show notes.
yeah. We'll throw it in the show notes, and I'm very findable. If I always sort of joke, if you can't find me, then you don't know enough about SEO for me to come work with you, anyways.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Todd. And thank you, listener. Thank you for being a valued part of the tribe and for being open to these sorts of business/spiritual conversations. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.